Several years ago, I had the privilege of meeting the Morrisons. It turns out that we have lots of friends in common, colleagues, and all kinds of overlaps in our respective circles. And so I am delighted to introduce my colleague, a co-founder of Enclave, a personal friend, David Morrison.
John asked me to talk about the difficulties with awards, psychological challenges, and I developed that, spent a lot of time on it. But I wish I'd heard what you guys were going to say first, because in some ways it would be nice just to sit down and have a panel discussion and let you talk. I do have 2 points, though, that I think I want to go ahead, because in some ways you all exemplified these points in your talks. Because when people get awards, it's a good time. They ought to feel good. They deserve to feel good. But many times they don't. Often there are things that happen where they don't feel that good on down the road, either about what they did to get the award or about themselves. And the other thing that happens is that sometimes their friends and their families and their business people look at them and they see their judgment has deteriorated. Why has their judgment become less after they got an important award? And I want to talk about those 2 things. Isn't that interesting? Now we'll talk about how your unconscious tries to screw you every time it gets a chance. Would you rather hear about that? Or would you rather just witness it? But by talking about the challenges, after we've had all these wonderful things, problems with awards, I feel like the skunk who came to the picnic. And I can just hear all of you saying, not only does he have to come, but he doesn't have a good enough sense not to do, his thing. Either the skunk thing or the psychiatrist thing. The psychiatrist thing is to talk about problems when everybody's having a good time. Because it isn't the good things that causes problems, it's the subtle little things that we hadn't expected and we don't even know till down the line there's some difficulties. And these things can be understood. And I'm not talking so much about those of you who receive the honors as the process of getting honors that all of us may go through at some time if we're lucky. And like anything else, awards are learning experiences. And Enclave can't let a good learning experience pass by without diving in and just working the dickens out of it. So that's part of what I'm going to be doing. In all things human, there are gains and there are losses. I will address the empty downside of awards. And that when you get after the activity that's so good and now you're sort of left to yourself, and also the possibility of losing some touch with reality that an award can do. David is going to talk after me about the effects other people can have on you as you get an award. You talked about that nicely just now. And you, as a matter of fact, gave David, I think, some examples what he might want to use. I'm going to talk about the effects that the award itself has, which contributes to the down feelings and relationship problems. Now, the first challenge is easy to understand, and as far as none of you had this problem. As a matter of fact, you all gave the antidote to it. But I'm still going to talk about the first challenge of awards. It can cause serious problems. A man who was an author was standing outside the reception area, the assembly room, where people were going to get national awards for things that they did. And he was saying, I'm not sure that I know why I'm here. I don't think I deserve this award. And he turned to the man standing next to him and said, how do you feel? And this man said he wasn't sure he belonged. He didn't know why he was even there. And the author said, but you're the first man who stepped on the moon. And Neil Armstrong replied, yes, but that wasn't me. There was all those people back in Houston that did all that work. There was all the engineers. There was all the technicians. There was all the political leaders that enabled this to take place. As a matter of fact, you could say it was all the American public who paid their taxes to get this going. That, of course, is what you raised in terms of all of the things that contributed to yours. The award is never earned by just one person. Others contributed and always contribute to our success. Now, I'm not opposed to feeling proud, elated, self-confident, and happy, and even more than that. But I am cautioning against thinking it was all me. And you all did that, but we need to lay it out. Why? Why would there be anything wrong with saying it's all me? Because such thinking feeds grandiose fantasies. It's all me. That's a grandiose fantasy, and the problem with grandiose fantasies is they move us out of touch with reality. None of us are that good. And a big part of our work here with entrepreneurs is helping them to stay in touch with reality, because there's nothing that's going to undermine your judgment, which is required for your enterprise, than losing touch with reality in one way or another. And what we teach them is we teach them that they need to understand the context so they can get a realistic perspective. And of course, when it comes to awards, the context, as you said, is always people. It's always all those people around that made their contributions. Avoiding grandiose fantasies and acknowledging the help of others points to the importance of humility. Neil Armstrong understood the importance of humility. Astronauts cannot afford to be out of touch with reality. We can get out of touch with reality a little bit, so we can have some of that grandiosity. But if you're going to be out there, you cannot afford to lose touch with reality, and Armstrong didn't. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is this challenge is more subtle. It is not as obvious, and it comes from basic research that goes back to actually the 50s and the 60s, and all over the world. This is in all cultures. And it's anything but common sense. It just, in some ways, doesn't make sense. And it is the problem of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation, which is basically what Mr. Castro spent his whole time talking about. I don't know how much you really are using that particular concept of intrinsic motivation, but those things that you talked about were basically intrinsic motivation. Now, what are those things that he and I are nodding our heads about? Extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic. It comes from outside the self. It consists of rewards and punishments. It's basically, if you would, Skinnerian behaviorist stuff that's taken over much of the whole world in terms of all the way to leadership and teaching and that sort of thing. Rewards include status, money, compliments, approval, popularity, recognition. All of those are extrinsic rewards. Extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from inside ourselves. Curiosity. Autonomously being able to choose. Developing a sense of mastery and competence. and participating in mutually caring relationships. Those are all inside. They push out. They're intrinsic. You don't give somebody an M&M to be curious. You don't give them money to be curious. You don't give them admiration or recognition. That's something that comes from inside naturally. That's exactly what you were talking about, it seems to me. Maybe not directly, but pretty much there. Intrinsic motivation promotes well-being, personal growth, positive emotions, and both physical and mental health. Extrinsic motivation does not promote any of those, and as a matter of fact, can diminish all of them. Extrinsic motivation can literally cause physical and mental illness because of the stress that it causes and because it doesn't really deal with basic psychological needs. Watch children at free play and you will see intrinsic motivation. They get hold of something, a block or several blocks, and for hours they will sit and concentrate and work on that as they're trying to master and they're trying to become competent and they're curious, and nobody is making them do it. It does not come from outside, it's inside. Now, there are many studies about ways to inhibit intrinsic motivation, and just about all of them, certainly all of them that I have read, include extrinsic motivation. If you want to kill intrinsic motivation, use extrinsic motivation. Let me give you an example. When 4- and 5-year-old children, healthy children, who like to play, who like to draw with magic markers, are given rewards to play with their magic markers, either a certificate or a star or a toy, when they're given rewards, they no longer like to play with magic markers. Even 2 weeks later, they still don't want to play with magic markers because they got a reward. What happens is that when you get a reward, your attention turns to the reward and you stop being interested in the activity that you're doing to get the reward. And if you enjoyed that activity before, now you don't care. Now you're focused on the reward. People's interest in what they are doing typically declines when they are rewarded for doing it. And one woman, researcher, put it, I thought, very nicely. I'm going to quote her. She said, "Who would have thought that play could be turned into work by rewarding people for doing what they like to do?" You got that? Give them a reward for doing what they like to do, and they don't like to do it anymore. Of course, if you give them a punishment, that's the same thing. You were focused more on the downside of punishment than reward, but you get the same downside with rewards. The interesting thing is that awards can function in the same way. The award can become more important than what you did to achieve the award. And then down the road, people can actually be less fulfilled and interested in what they did to achieve the award in the first place. This is part of the problem of giving children trophies. When you give them trophies, it spoils their pleasure in the athletics or the other activities that they're doing. Trophies are a way to make children less interested in doing it, and now it becomes extrinsic. It becomes something that they do, for an award or not to be punished, as opposed to doing it for the pleasure of the sports and so forth. So, if this has happened, it doesn't sound like it happened to any of you, but if it does, or if it happens to any of you, if you get an award, if you notice a letdown after the award, weeks, maybe a month down the road, ask yourself if the reward has become more important to you than what you did to achieve the award. If so, focus on what you did. What you did to receive the award and not the award itself. Spend time remembering that you accomplished what you did. Maybe not alone, certainly not alone, but your contribution nevertheless was significant. And remember the enjoyment that you had in performing the activities to accomplish what you accomplished. Keeping yourself and your accomplishment in perspective is always helpful. And I think all of you talked about that in your presentations. And you did accomplish some important and impressive things, so much so that people wanted to give you an award. Feeling good about that is realistic, and it's also justified. Now, David's going to talk about how other people relate to your accomplishments.
Stop paying you guys, I guess. I can give rewards. It's all downhill from here. Yeah, so, yeah.
There are ways to get around it.
Good evening. Thank you, David, and thank you, John, and all the luminaries. Thank you very much for your achievements. My father talked about the challenges that come on the inside with dealing with awards. I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges from the outside that come from winning the award, and in particular focus on the emotions. That's part of what I try to bring, what I think about related to solving problems for the enclave and thinking about solutions and ideas for the enclave. One of the core ideas we have here, and just want to reiterate, is the idea of the collider or the accelerator of concepts. And I wish we could take an entire afternoon or even a weekend and just have conversations about all the ideas generated, smash them together and think about what are the implications, what are the interconnections. We've barely engaged you all in the audience, and that would be, I know many of you out there are deep and bright and thoughtful people, and it'd be wonderful to be able to do that. But I'm going to just essentially read my comments here. Essentially, you'll have an experience a bit like a psychoanalytic institute. In the interest of time, we're just going to go right through this. Are we ready? All ready? Okay. An experienced clinician, a psychotherapist, once noted to her patient, "You don't always get clarity as a result of our time together. Sometimes you get confused, and so you may leave here confused. In fact, Matthew, if you leave here confused, I've done my job." In that vein, I'd like to offer the following. We are here celebrating luminaries. They have been recognized as the best in their fields. Now, today, celebrated by Enclave and by our broader community of Enclavians, you all. We hope these luminaries are experiencing positive emotions: pride, excitement, satisfaction, pleasure, contentment, peace. All of these are what we envision the triumphant to enjoy. These emotions are blends of personal and individual thoughts as unique to them and their own narratives as their fingerprints. Yet common to all of us underneath lie hardwired, biologically based emotions, affects they are called. The two positive ones are enjoyment and excitement. However, and we've seen them, I've heard them, odds are they may experience negative emotions too, and this is when things get confusing. There may be fear. Might I lose it? Might it be taken away? Distress. Do I continue to push myself? And can I? Embarrassment, like the astronaut. I am not seeking to spoil their fun or rain on their parade, but rather shine a spotlight on a common human dynamic, one I hadn't mentioned so far, and it's a common to all of us: envy. Together as an Enclave and Elk Grove community, we can be, this envy can be managed. As a group, if we seek to understand, if we can knock it out like a virus, we can vaccinate and inoculate, and then graciously and gratefully continue to celebrate our luminaries. What is envy? We psychiatrists see it as the most destructive emotion, greater than pride, greater than greed. How does it work? Imagine an envious person. They feel envy towards another. Specifically, they are incomplete, insufficiently nourished, loved, recognized, appreciated. Yet in their worlds there are the others who are fulfilled, well-nourished. These others are abundant. They have more than enough. In fact, they have so much they can give to the envious one to the point that the envious one is fulfilled. But the story does not end there. The giver retains more after giving. The giver is abundant, and the envious one can't stand the difference. So, the story does not end there. The envious one seeks to destroy, in word and action, the abundancy, leaving both inadequate, but in the end, the envious one has more. Inadequate, but more. What is an example? Of course, we all have to watch it here. It can be seen anywhere, between wealthy and poor, knowledgeable and ignorant, minority and majority. Both sides of those divides can be envious. In the generations, a teenager's snark can dismiss a parent's cherished wisdom, and a parent's cutting comment can ruin an adolescent's youthful beauty. And again, yes, we can see it here. We can be envious of these luminaries, and they can be victims too. How do we know? How do we know when this happens? We can tell with the emotions again, when the positive turns sour, when there is a sense of something spoilt, something went rotten. Holidays can be ripe soil, and we can all start it ourselves. So, with that wonderful sentiment, what do we do about it? Well, the antidote for us, as when we see it, is to be gracious, to have gratitude. As a community of abundance, and we are, as Enclavians, as people of Elk Grove Village, we are a community of abundance, and we can be gracious. And as a master of grace and abundance, I'd like to turn the podium back over to John Dallas.
Thank you. My closing remarks are brief. They include such things as ping pong, wine, food. Lots of food is about to be served. The caterers are standing in the back with their ovens and those kinds of things. But please, please take note of the depth, the breadth, and the height of the topics we've discussed tonight. The honorees themselves have done just such a phenomenal job giving you an inside track of what it was like for them to get to where they are and where they're going to be. Where they're going to be, year after year, we will watch here in this building, and we hope to do this every year, a Luminary Leaders Award every year to the person and persons who really distinguish themselves as shining light for all of us to follow. So I don't want to stop without saying a profound personal vote of thanks to every single person in this room who volunteers time. All of us are volunteers. Not one of us is salaried, not I, not the Morrisons. Nobody takes a salary in this program. It's completely volunteer. And so we've all invested time and money in the program because we believe in this difference. And the difference is focus first on the individual, second on the venture, third on profitability. And that will cure, we believe, the unfortunate level of bankruptcies, the unfortunate level of failures that we have in our entire region and our nation, actually. There are too many companies that are failing, and we are going to change that by making people stronger. I also want to thank profusely the trustees of Elk Grove Village. There are a couple who are particularly active with us, Nancy, who chairs our advisory council here, and Sam Lisner, who is a fellow tweeter. So Sam and I are on Twitter almost every day. We have gathered in our 3 Twitter pages over 11,000 or 12,000 followers, which is a particularly interesting thing. And Twitter, as you probably know, shows you the analytics of who's following you. So the level of business leaders, the academicians, the public officials, Kauffman Foundation, which is the largest organization in the country for studying entrepreneurship, Forbes magazine, other organizations are watching what we're doing here. They're liking the tweets. They're watching the direction. We hope they come here someday. We would love to invite them. And also to thank our sponsors, to have Comcast Business as a sponsor, and Kellerham and Buckley and Porty Brown and all the other organizations who sponsor us and contribute to us. We are absolutely grateful, and please stick with us. We will be here for years if all goes well.